There once was a man named Bhenji. He worked every day with one thing on his mind, spending his hours and minutes ranking his games. He didn't care whether they were long or short, easy or hard. And so here we sit at the edge of the world with Bhenji's top 100 games. Massive Darkness. We start this segment of the list with another game that turned my head as soon as it was announced, looking like a cross between Zombicide and a traditional dungeon crawler. Sounded like a match made in heaven to me. So like Zombicide, it's fully cooperative and all the enemies have an AI that determines their movement and behaviour. But you've also got a much richer character upgrade experience, and the combat is a bit more involved as well, bringing the best parts of both to the party to make for a truly engaging gameplay experience. Yes, the light and dark twist to some of the mechanics doesn't necessarily sing, and the lack of any meaningful campaign in the only released core set to date means there's a bit of a missed opportunity here. But I'm more than willing to forgive those quibbles, as the pros to this are oh so sweet and for what I need from this type of game. Thunderstone Quest. The latest in the Thunderstone series, the previous iteration Thunderstone Advance being my absolute first introduction to deck builders, and my oh my was I hooked. Thunderstone Quest is a big box game with lots of content, and its core is that of a traditional deck builder. All of you start with the same deck of cards and upgrade as you go. Except there are a few more things you can do in town this time to help expand your list of options, leaving you highly unlikely to have a complete dud of a turn. Once you're all tuned up and the bloodlust sets in, it's time to delve deep into the dungeon. There are a handful of big bosses to come up against, but it's the in-between that houses the real satisfaction in exploring and gaining experience, resources and special treasures. This is the definitive version of Thunderstone, making a great game even better. King of Tokyo. Like the previous entry, this is one of the first party-like games I played that didn't feel like a square game, and to my absolute surprise at the time, it was designed by Richard Garfield, creator of Magic the Gathering. The game employs a really simple concept that all revolves around massive kaiju-sized creatures battling it out in Tokyo. The artsy-style dice rolling, where you roll and then re-roll your dice up to 2 times, fits the game extremely well. There are 2 routes to victory, either be the last big ugly standing or gain a certain number of victory points first. The contrast in those 2 means of winning I think are what make the game a standout. The push your luck elements where you are either inside Tokyo and attacking everyone outside, or vice versa, means you can only stay too long in the city. I suspect I'll always have a real fondness for this game, and I can't see it leaving my top 100 anytime soon. EVERDELL. A new addition to my collection and a sharp riser in my list. That's in large part due to the theme and art style of this game, which is so damn cute. The game offers some relatively straightforward worker placement, where you're more often than not gaining one type of resource or another, but it combines it with some city or tableau building to really great effect. There are 2 types of cards you can introduce to your city, critters or buildings, and some of those buildings synergise and allow you to recruit those critters for free. Your cards are also broken down into different types, so some have an immediate effect and an effect at the end of the round, whereas some give you more points come the end of the game, and depending on what other cards you've placed in your tableau. This is just a game to bring a smile to your face, and I think understands its target audience and brings all the good bits to the surface. Just a fantastic new game. Heroes of Land, Air and Sea. A 4X game with a traditional fantasy setting with humans and elves, dwarves and orcs. Okay, I'm interested. Interest turned into delight when this first got to the table. Each faction has its own strengths and weaknesses and overall playstyle, and you can quite literally explore, exterminate, expand and exploit your way to victory. Each player starts on their own continent, but exploring other continents and encountering other players in combat is a threat that's never too far away. The first few turns, however, you'll most likely be collecting taxes for resources and upgrading your capital city and recruiting workers and warriors to deliver on your game plan. I think it's the real sense of options that make this such a delightful game. The exploration tokens make for a real adventure into the unknown, and combat sets itself apart as something a little bit different. All in all, I have a great deal of time for this game for all of the gameplay opportunities it provides. Star Wars Legion. Why, there's so many bloody good Star Wars games on the market. Apologies, I needed that. Star Trek Rules! Right, I'm done. Star Wars miniature tabletop wargaming has been done before, but not with this much polish and impetus that FFG brings to the table. Let's start with how awesomely elegant and simple the movement is in this game. You move one model and the rest just need to stay in coherency. It's too easy not to be rolled out to all of miniature tabletop gaming. But you can't just be so great at something and it's as banal as troop movement. You've got to have fantastic miniatures, check. Engaging scenarios and objectives, check. And top drawer combat mechanics, and a check. This is what I would call a medium weight tabletop game, and for that matter medium sized. There isn't anything too in depth or complex about it, so it fits in a nice hole in my collection between skirmish war games and big epic battle war games. Make it so, number one. SAGRADA. How can a game about stained glass windows, based thematically on a building that's taken 1 million years and counting to build, be so bleeding great? It's a question I've asked myself, well, only once actually, and I quickly moved on to enjoying the game itself. What it is a dice placement game with beautiful 6-sided rolling shapes, and you have a 5x5 grid that you need to place certain coloured dice and certain numbered dice in certain spaces. Oh, that certainly is a lot of certainty in an uncertain world, ladies and gentlemen. You've also got both global objectives and private objectives. After an engaging, puzzle-like 10 rounds of play will be the determining factor to how many points you will receive. Bite off more than you can chew and you'll probably get stuck unable to place dice. But focus your efforts on most, not all of the objectives and you'll be golden. I really love everything this game has to offer, and the fact that it's stunning to boot is just icing on the cake. Spirit Island. There's quite a few new games to my collection in this segment of the list. Maybe this is as high as you can get when you've had a game for less than 12 months. We shall see. Great theme, let's just say that. You play as formidable spirits looking to protect your island and the native inhabitants from invading colonists. Your job is to strike fear into those unwelcome visitors and either destroy them or get them to brick it and scarper off their own backs. A tick in the theme box, but where this sings is how you get to pilot each of the wildly differing spirits. Each have a really distinct playstyle to them and make this a joy to play. There's a lot of strategy involved, especially in multiplayer, but the game itself, essentially just area control, has an extremely fluid logic to its mechanics, making the game comparatively easy to play considering its complexity. I get the very real feeling this game will be on the rise this time next year. Century, Column Edition. From one fluid game to another, this reskin of Century Spice Road is a game that flows so smoothly I can barely find fault with it at all. I prefer this version because the artwork is absolutely amazing. This is really just a simple resource exchange game where you each keep taking small actions and round you go until a certain number of golem objectives have been captured depending on the player count. Whether you're upgrading your crystals or changing some for a mix of more and less valuable, there's always a plan to execute and a golem to win over. It's really difficult to capture in a bottle a game that does nothing wrong in your eyes. Most of the games higher on this list I can find some fault with, and so it's only really this game's lightweight complexity and strategic ceiling that keeps this from being higher on my list. Zombicide. This is probably one of the games that got me heavily back into the hobby. At the time it was card games and miniature war games for me, but when this became a crowdfunded mega hit I was taken along for the ride like everyone else. For those of you living under a rock for the last decade, this fully cooperative game where you play regular Joes and Janes fighting hordes and hordes of zombies, fulfilling scenario objectives, trying and failing not to make noise, and generally just rolling a bunch of dice in order to mow down as many zombies as you possibly can, is about as simple a premise as you can get. This is how you mainline a game to the fun zone of your brain. You'll be gaining necessary skills and abilities as you go and collecting more and more outrageous weapons to help you in your cause. But if you don't work collectively as a team, you're really going to struggle to win each scenario. A great way to teach cooperation and a great game overall. I do hope you've enjoyed my choices so far. Stay tuned for the next 10 games on my list. This video has ended.